I would like to give you some basic information on programming in Excel, writing equations in Excel. To begin with, Excel has a powerful pattern recognition capability. If you type in any two numbers in a pattern, assuming it's a linear pattern, such as 1 enter, 2 enter, Excel will recognize this as counting by 1. And if you highlight these cells, and if you were to left click on the square in the bottom right hand corner of the bottommost cell, notice your cursor will turn into a solid black plus sign. So it's an open cross going to a small plus sign, and if you were to left click and drag that down, so hold the left mouse button down and drag down, you can drag down as far as you'd like, and very quickly you can generate values from 1 to 25. Let me delete those, and let's say you didn't want to count by ones, let's say you want to count by fives. So if you were to start with a 0, hit enter, press 5 and then enter, there is a pattern. If you highlight those two cells and put your cursor on the lowest right hand corner of the bottommost cell, your cursor changes to a solid black plus sign. You can drag that down as far as you want, maybe to 100, and very quickly you can generate lots of numbers without having to type them all in. Quick background on how Excel labels information. Every one of these squares that is editable, that is, you can type, you can edit stuff inside there, are called cells. And every cell is identified by a column and a row. So if I choose this cell over here, I am in column G, row 2, and that is identified for us up here in this naming box. If I go down here, I am in column B, row 12, and that's identified for us again up here in the naming box. So just a little vocabulary for you. If I let me go back to a pattern of let me count by 2, starting at let's start at 20, and let's count backwards in groups of 2 by even numbers. So I will highlight. You have to highlight the grouping. You can't just highlight one cell. If you were to highlight one cell and drag that down, it's just going to create a whole bunch of 20s. Let me undo that. Highlight the grouping, drag that down until we get to 0. Or we can go to negative 10. And there's a pattern from 20 to negative 10 in groups of 2. If I wanted to duplicate those numbers over here using a formula, I can use it. I can start by selecting the cell that I want my first formula to be and hitting an equal sign, and now Excel is waiting for us to type a formula. Now our formula could be as simple as another cell value. If I were to click on this cell A1, notice A1 shows up, and if I hit enter, the value of B is not B1, I'm sorry, is now the same value as the value of A1. And what's very cool about Excel is I can copy this formula down. I don't need a pattern. If I've got a formula, I can copy the formula down by doing the same thing. Click on the bottom right hand corner of the cell formula that you want to copy down, drag it down, and notice all of your cell values in the current row of column B is the same as the column value A, the current row in the column value A. And if you were to click on the cells in column B, you'll notice that if I'm on row 11, what's inside this formula is equals A11. Notice it's no longer A1. When I drag the formula down, it automatically updates whatever row I'm on, and that's just a very useful feature in Excel. If for some reason you did not want to do that, if for some reason you always wanted to lock in on A1, for instance, you could lock in that row number by putting a $sign in front of there. When you hit enter and then come back to this formula and copy that formula down, notice that every one of these cells is now referring to whatever lives inside of A1. If A1 changes to -100, for example, and you hit enter, notice all of these cells will change to -100. Let me go back to 20. Maybe you didn't want to reference A1, maybe you always wanted to reference A7. If I change this to A7, notice B1, the value of B1 is always going to be whatever lives in A7. And if I copy this formula down, all of these values will be exactly whatever lives in A7. If I change this to 99, all of column B changes to 99. This may or may not be useful. Sometimes you want this, sometimes you don't. Let me go back to taking out the $sign, and let me go back to referencing A1 when I'm in B1, and I'll copy this formula down. And let's say that we wanted to multiply whatever is in column A in the current row that I'm in by the number 2. In order to do that, I would just keep the equal sign there, and I want to take whatever lives in A1, whatever is in the current row of column A, and I want to multiply by 2. I would use the asterisk 2. That means times 2. And that turned out right. 2 times 20 is 40. And if I were to drag that formula down, you will see that every cell value in column B is identical to the current row of column A times 2. If I wanted to do divide by 2, I would replace the asterisk with a division sign, hit enter, copy that formula down, and now you'll see that every cell value in column B is identical to the current row in column A divided by 2. If I wanted to add 2, I would use a plus sign, copy that formula down, and every cell value in the current row of the B column is identical to the current row in the A column plus 2. And lastly, if I were to subtract 2, I would use a minus sign. And likewise, every cell value in the current row of B is identical to the current cell value in column A minus 2. And that is a quick introduction to programming in Excel.